Welcome to Your American Dream. I'm Anisha Jennings, and today we're exploring how asking the right questions can transform challenges into opportunities with Barbara, whose journey from virtual assistant to strategic visionary proves that sometimes the biggest solutions start with simply asking how. Welcome, Barbara. Thank you for being on my show.
Thank you, Anisha. I'm very excited to be joining you. It's the first time that I'm talking about the journey to come to the United States, because I believe America is a whole continent, right? We
Yeah.
have North America and South America. But I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. So it's such a pleasure to be chatting with you today again. So tell us about your journey from Venezuela to US and how it all started.
Great. So I've been running businesses since I'm like 15 years old. It started with a family business in Venezuela. We used to have a travel agency that we ran for about 20 or more years, and it was a very successful business. And it was a very comfortable space to be in. Of course, I was with family, but we also had um, team members that were travel agents or people in operations that were supporting the mission of the travel agency down there. And we specialized in supporting the communities that we had access to improve the tourism in those areas. So we were focused on developing little towns or helping develop little towns to make them more attractive to people to come from, at least from in the internally from Venezuela, to visit, or for foreign tourists to come and just visit that specific town. Again, we were just supporters of this mission, but it was a very, very great time when we had the travel agency over there. However, around, well, I mean, it all started in 1999, but around 2010, 2013-ish, the country, probably earlier than that, it started having a lot of problems on all levels, politically, economically, socially. I'm sure a lot of people are aware of the situation in Venezuela. So I started asking, how can I feel safe and, work at the same time and be in an environment where my mind is at ease. So I probably didn't ask it this way in that specific moment. It was something more of like, what's better than this, right? Like, how can I access a different area? How can I feel better? Where can I find adventure? And so actually it's my desire to immigrate started earlier. I went to Toronto in 2009 to improve my English skills. So of course English is my second language. However, I was a very good student, and because of my greatness as a student, my gift for graduation was 6 months in Canada learning or improving my English. And when I arrived there, it turns out it was very advanced, so I didn't really have to do a lot of work in terms of learning new things or anything. It was mostly conversational. So in Toronto, I got to meet a lot of people, a lot of new cultures. And in that experience, a little bug of adventure stayed with me. And I really wanted more of that. So regardless of where it would be, though, like, the UK, wherever English was spoken. So I really wanted to travel. I was like, okay, I've never really traveled other than Toronto. Where else can I go? I then went to Colombia to see my friends from Toronto. And then I found another way to meet more people, get more experience in the business world and the social world. And I found something called the au pair program. The au pair program, it's an exchange program, although there's really no one going to your home country for. You exchange your time for supporting a family in the United States. Well, the program that I chose was in the United States, but you choose a family in the United States to support them with childcare. And you become basically the fun friend for the kids while the parents go work, and you spend time with the kids and just taking care of the kids, making sure that they are provided for. And at the same time, you get time to study, and you get a stipend. I think the program is still available. If anybody is considering it, highly recommend. In the US, it's open for 27 for people up to 27 years old. Abroad, though, it's a very common thing for people to travel this way and exchange, your time for staying in a good place or staying in a new city and getting a stipend out of it. So I came to the US as an au pair, and I stayed, and you know, it was a very beautiful journey meeting all these new friends. I still have contact with most of them, luckily. And then I found a job as a virtual assistant at a agency it was very famous when I started. It's called Searchable, and they are still alive. However, it was short-lived because in August 2015 they shut down overnight, unfortunately. However, that was the pivoting moment for me. I had the choice to go on my own and with the clients that I had at the agency. And I'm very blessed. I'm a very lucky woman. Everybody said yes, so that's how my business started. And that's how literally my business life in the US was formed. I was a virtual assistant for many years. And in 2020, I think it was 2020, 2019, I started stepping a little bit more into my leadership position within those companies. And some of them we stopped the relationship, but many of them refer me out to their friends. So my network is, I call them the circle of Barbara because they all know Barbara, and they refer each other to find a Barbara. So now I help people find their how, like going into the operational state to find solutions to the problems that they have, or to set objectives that will take them to a different place. And I also help them use their books to build their revenues. So it's a little mix of everything, but at the heart of it, it's operational work.
Lovely. That's so cool. And I love that that you spoke about the program and that you highly recommend it, which is important because,
Yeah.
we need that kind of feedback. That's amazing. So, what was it like running a business at 15?
Well, I wasn't like running it, sure, because it was a family business. So we had a lot of I had the opportunity to have that responsibility. So I moved around every role in the company since I mean, probably a little earlier than that, but uh, to the real stuff, it started at 15. Um, and you feel powerful. Feel like one of those shows that you see on TV. Uh, although for some people, having talking about family businesses can be a little bit lame, because it's like a duh, right? Like if your mom is the boss, then of course you're gonna get, access to this or that. But it depends on the family. No, you don't get that kind of power with every family. So in my case, my mom is a, sweetheart, but we have defined roles, and I will fill in gaps wherever needed when I was younger, because my job was still to get good grades, and play in a way. At 15, now I realize I was still a child, although I was, probably not thinking about it the same way, but my job at 15 was to ensure basically like an assistant as well, right? So taking care of that things got done with every team member in every event. We hosted a lot of events in the travel industry. So it was a lot of event planning and doing. I was a doer for a long time. And then whenever the leadership component of the travel agency was what my mom and two other team members weren't there, then we will be left in charge of the office. So office manager, right? Like I was able to manage the office. We had about up to 10 people at a time working with us. So it was not a big operation, but big enough to have things to do every day. Yeah, and that's how like at 15-ish, that's 15 to like probably 18. That's what happened there.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So, how did your family's travel agency shape your business approach over here?
That's a great question. So, what I would say that, and the reason why I always talk about the family business is because it's shaped the way that I offer my services here, which is very, very, very customer centric and hospitality centered. So it's about how can I help and how can we make this better every single time. And I think that's what differentiates my services from other people, although, there are other companies as well that like the HowFinder offer very, very customer centric support or guidance, but it is caring. Caring is the cornerstone of this whole enterprise. And right now, I think we're living in a moment in time where a lot of more people are caring, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. How has your immigrant experience influenced your leadership style?
I would say, I mean, culturally though, I would say the culture also shaped my leadership style. I have an innate drive to be a leader. Like, let's say that I was a bossy baby, probably. I can't remember much, but I'm sure it was in some way. Very introverted, but very, certain and firm into what I wanted and very clear about what I wanted. So I knew I wanted to help people in ways that were easier. I knew I wanted to travel since a very young age. And the way that we were raised is also, influenced a lot on how I lead right now. Other factors that have influenced my leadership, I would say it will be my mother's leadership as well and how she handled her own enterprise. Because we had the travel agency, but there were other ventures as well. And watching how she handled that and how she treated people, I really think it's now that I'm realizing that it's helped shape how I function now as a leader.
That makes sense. That's leading by example. That's a great example. So you started as a virtual assistant with your career. How did you stumble upon that industry so early on?
Well, I knew I had a talent to help with operations. So, when looking for jobs, it just made sense to find a virtual assistant job. And I wanted to work from home. So I always had that focus. I'll tell you why. Because part of my degree in Venezuela, I actually graduated online. I started it in person, but because of what happened in Venezuela, in asking those questions, how can I get something better than this, right? I switched my thinking into, okay, what else is possible here that I haven't considered for me to finish my degree? And I talked to the university, I negotiated, and they allowed me to finish it online. That was my first degree, and after that, I didn't really want to do anything in person. So, uh, how can I get more of this? And then, as a filter, as a criteria, I want to work from home. So I started looking for jobs, work from home, remote jobs. It was actually at that time, 2015, I think it still exists, an Instagram called Remote Project Manager, because I was like, okay, this might be a thing. And now it's more of a thing than in 2015, but it was a very, very early time for people to even think of having or working from home. Like, it's nothing new, but in 2015 was something odd. And I was very lucky to get that job for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And for those who were already working from home, COVID was it just made it easier.
Yeah. I was gonna say that when COVID hit, we were like, oh, what are these newbies talking about? Just get used to it. Like it was a shift and it's still a shift for people to consider the ease that it is working from home. However, it requires a lot of discipline and self-leadership to be able to hold a schedule and stick to a routine for work. So for some brains, it might work. For others, it definitely doesn't, and that's totally okay. We definitely need the in-person experience. And right now, as more people care about each other, this experience of being human is way more important. So I just wanted to add that to the COVID experience.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. So what led you to creating the HowFinder methodology?
Great. So literally people just coming to me asking, how do I do this? How do I do that? And I noticed that most of the time, leaders or business owners or authors that have a business or are thinking about building a business are somewhat clear in their why, meaning people that have had some experience with this. Because usually, if you are an employee and are thinking about building a business, you have an idea of your why. It's totally not clear, right? But somebody has thought about it a lot and it's clear about why they want what they want. Then when they get to the how, they get stuck into how they do it. And how do I move this forward? And then you buy the course and then you go, get an MBA and you're still not clear after the MBA. And then you go hire this consultant, but was it really consulting what you needed or a plan for, moving forward based on what you have right now? So after about, what was that, like 6 years or more or less, I decided to call it HowFinder. Actually, it started as an expansion team. And then I chose to change it to HowFinder, but HowFinder really was, it was born in Scotland a wonderful branding consultant, and I went to Scotland because of Outlander. I'm not gonna lie. So in the branding session, we were going back and forth. What's a cool name for this? And he said HowFinder, and wow, I don't know why, it just stuck with me. I'm like, I love that, so I'm gonna stick with it. So far in 2025, February, it's still HowFinder. I don't know if I'm going to change it. Anything can change, and we have that ability. But for now, I love the name, and I love what I stand for through that message, and I help people find their how.
That's so sweet. I mean, it makes sense too, because that's basically what you're trying to do. So, how do you approach finding ease in challenges?
First of all, breathing. Whenever I get an emergency call, I call it a hotline, 1-800-BARB. Um, please don't call that. I don't know if they're pointing to something else. But when clients call with an emergency, or when a prospect calls, it's with the how, right? Like, how do I move forward with this? And one of the key questions that I ask is, where are you and what are you doing? That helps the person to center themselves of where they are. It sounds dumb, but it really helps get the conversation to a place where it's an easy space for me to handle and a clearer space for them to communicate as well. So where are you and what are you doing are two key questions that I ask. It could change on how I ask it, but generally I start with those 2 points to kind of get the person present in the moment. And then if needed, a deep breath, and then tell me, how can I help? How can I help? Or did you just start talking, right? And then I start asking questions. What are other ways that you haven't, that we can handle this that you haven't thought about? What's available to us to solve this? So simple, clear, and effective questions can take a person a long, long way down the road to success or to resolution or whatever it is that they're coming for.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's very hard when you are a new business owner, or you are in a place where you want to pivot or scale, and you're like, I don't know what to do or how to do it, or maybe it's all in my head, but I need some clarity on how to move forward with this. And I can't think of the right questions. So with people like you who ask the right questions and try to get us out of our head and bring us out of our chaos, that's very, very helpful. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't say the right questions, because I mean, what I think it's the right question might be the wrong question.
hmm,
I will go by the energy that's required in the moment. So I start with the two situational questions to kind of locate the person mentally and physically. But then after that, depending on what they say and how they're feeling, because it always starts with you, right? Like, regardless if it's business related or not, we are creators, and whatever question we have and what the reason why you're calling me for, it's coming from you because you're the one voicing it. So I would say more than again the right question, I would say what's the energy required here, and then I go by that based on my foundational questions. Then I kind of assess the energy. It's very easy to do. Energy is a language, and we all know it. We just need to, be so present that we can tune into it. But yeah, that's how I handle that.
thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah,
That is so true. Energy is definitely a language. So how do you balance empathy with your strategic decisions?
it's hard because sometimes there are other empathics out there. It can be a challenge to know what's yours and what isn't. So that's where the questions of where am I and what am I doing help to discern what's the thing that's me and what's the thing that's driving the strategic decision. However, if we go from an empathy point of view, it's just about, being compassionate, a compassionate human being attuned to the other person and being a listener, listen very, very carefully what they're saying and very intentfully, so that you can answer in a way that helps them. So it's not reactive, you're actually collaborating even when there's no request to collaborate. Your communication is being a contribution to the person.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mhm.
How did you develop your signature process?
Through experience and doing the same thing over and over again, and then figuring out ways that asking questions, ways that it could be different, and pointing out to different results. it's based on I call it seven dimensions of business. And I might change that name though, but I think they are dimensions because you can jump through them, or they don't have a specific order. It depends on where the energy is, or where your business is, right? So if you have already started a business, but you're having team problems, then the team dimension that usually is higher up in my list is not going to be the same for you. It will be even higher. So it's based on seven strategic dimensions, and it was developed through experience, lots of uh, errors and successes, because there's both of them. But that and the feedback from clients on what they found helpful when I came in and supported their team and their business.
So you started out as a VA and
Yeah.
then now you're a CEO. Tell us about that journey and the transition and how you handled everything from being a VA to now a CEO.
Great. So it's still in transition because I'll always be a doer at heart, but now I have more awareness into leadership, and I have a little team of three, three wonderful women, and it's more about being mindful of how others can help support the mission that you're helping drive through for yourself and for other businesses. So, it's been a beautiful journey. And it's nice because you at one point you I kind of dreamt about it, and now it's actually happening. So it's I'm in that moment in time where it's being actualized, but it feels great, and it's a difference from being a doer per se into a guide and a strategic partner to other people. So it's an interesting transition. It's a different space that I enjoy very much, and I respect both. I know how to be an excellent VA, and I also am now realizing how excellent it is to be a CEO.
That's amazing. Lovely. So, for people who are new in the business or at a point where they want to, start hiring a team or start operations, what would be your suggestion on how to go about this? What would be like certain things that they should keep in mind before they start either building a team or want to expand? What would be your advice?
The first thing that I would recommend is to get real with the numbers, regardless of where you are. So sometimes when we're visionaries, we're nonstop, we're unstoppable, we're creating and doing this and doing that and scratching this and drawing new things, and we forget about Earth, or we forget about what's real and what's real in the bank account anyway. But what helps drive the whole business is the numbers. So wherever anybody else is, if it's just starting a new business, check your personal finances, where you are there, and what you can really, use to move forward with any choice of business. If you already have a business, check your profit line, check your expenses, where like let's be real about it, and then decide if it's a risk worth taking to invest in something or someone, or if it's better to find ways to get what you want in using what you have.
That's great advice. So if someone is ready to start looking for a team or building a team, what would be your advice there?
How are your systems? How's your onboarding? How's your documentation? Are you in a space where it's easy for this new person to come in and get to work right away, or what's the process there, right? Are they compatible? So I always like to check or have conversations with the potential team member to see if it will make sense to work together. Personality is a big thing. I don't believe you still can. It used to be in the past, or at least in Venezuela, but personality tests. They were a thing back then when I was studying, not anymore, I believe, here in the US especially. But there are ways of using an interview to determine if there's connection there, and to see how a team member defends themselves or presents themselves when being interviewed. And again, I'm gonna go back to the foundation. How are your systems? Do you have onboarding setup? Do you have offboarding setup? And anything in between. Documentation is key to help employees be successful.
Absolutely. That is really important. So, yeah, my experience as well, like when you want to hand over things to someone, you should know what you want to hand over. And unless you have it straight, it's very difficult to hand it over. So
Yeah.
that's true. So, how do you define courageous empathy?
Courageous empathy is having empathy, but also being mindful enough to speak out about it and to manage it. Sometimes people confuse empathy with being nice or, being soft. So the courageous part comes from that point of the opposite of that point of view of like, I'm a courageous empath. I have the confidence to speak up and to help you do this or that, and being honest about it and being confident about it and not taking any other energy to trump that I know I am.
So, what is your key to maintaining excellence across diverse projects?
Goodness, communication, communication, over communication. I think right now, at least for in 2025, over communication, especially for remote teams, it's key. There's one thing about micromanaging. That's not what this is. Over communicating because generally there's under communication. So you want to be vocal about your process. I don't need a whole, 500 word email. I just need an update. Or, you update your thing on ClickUp or you update your thing on Airtable. Communication, just so that the team is in sync, so that there are no cracks open, there are no misunderstandings. That's very common in remote teams because there is no communication. So over communicate.
That's great. So, how do you achieve that with your team?
I don't bother them, or I like to think I don't bother them. But talking about the ways that they communicate helps. For employees, there's a centralized system for communication. We don't use Slack, we use Google Space. But for others, contractors, it's a little bit harder. So you have to establish the best way to communicate before in the onboarding process and making sure that throughout the whole relationship, that communication is still, or that channel of communication is still the best one to communicate. So in my case, depending on the generation of the contractor, I would probably resort to text, the good old phone call, besides Google Space and email.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So, what is your vision for transforming business challenges?
For what? For 2025, let's say, or 2025 to 2027, the transformation will happen in asking questions to open spaces for creation or greater creation. So that my vision is to help 212 in my lifetime, at least 212 business owners to build their business, improve their business, set up their systems, and find purpose or remember their purpose through their business. So in terms of transformation, the transformation is the process of it all. But yeah, that's one of my goals.
So, why 212?
I don't know. I have something with the number 212. And 212 is I think a number that if I reach it, it will be my dream come true. Again, the more I research, the more I have an MBA and everything. The more I research and the more I learn. I'm also a bookish person, so I read a lot. And the more I read, the more I realize not everybody or everybody doesn't really know what they're doing. We're all choosing whatever we're choosing because we can't choose it. And I think of course there are for certain objectives, there's math behind it. In my case, I'm setting that up, that 12 to 12 number, because there are some math behind it. But it's a number that I feel comfortable targeting. It's a number that will fulfill me if I reach it. And if I reach it, it will be my home run. But it doesn't mean that another business owner needs, that number. We set up goals that are even bigger than that. I want to remain not small, but very boutique in the approach that I take to business. And I did a calculation in time, and 212 businesses throughout my life, it's enough businesses to support. If I wanted to become a speaker, then my goal I'm sorry, my objective will change to a bigger, broader audience or even a bigger, broader population. But for now, that's the one. And I would say that if anybody is considering or is struggling with setting objectives or targets for their business, think about them being very specific as to what you want to do, what you want to achieve in your lifetime, even if it ends early. That's something I talk to my clients about, that death is in the way of you being here and it affects a lot of people surrounding you, of course. But I invite people to think about it as a lifetime exercise rather than a time-bound thing of 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 3 years from now, which is very common in the space. But yeah, thinking about it vision-wise in a lifetime frame, what you want to do with your life. If you only got one with this body.
That's a great perspective. Thank you for sharing that. So, how do you handle book strategy differently?
Book strategy differently. So, with Monaco Associates, I partner with them when there is a book involved with clients and the client is ready to publish their book. We help them launch their book in ways that build their business. And it's a whole process of identifying where the client is from a branding perspective, driving them all through what it means to publish a book, a business book. And after that, we also take them into creating a plan for the book release or even the book writing if they need to write it and don't know how. We set that up for them as well. And then the maintenance, because a business, I don't think a lot of people think about it this way, but a book is a business on its own. It's an entity that you need to take care of. So when you consider adding a book to your life, a book that you author or you help create, then you need to consider it as a member of your team in a way.
That's great. What advice would you give to aspiring business owners or strategists?
Get clear on what you want. Be brutally honest with yourself as to what it is that you want to be experiencing. Who do you want to help? It needs to be clear. It's one thing to know your why and like why you're doing what you're doing. I'm doing this because I like to help people brush your teeth in the morning. It's different than I want to help people avoid, build up in their teeth. Like the pinpointing is different. If you're clear enough with your why, the how it's easier to identify. The struggle is when the why you think it's clear is really not, or it's not there, or it's there, but there's no structure behind it. So getting brutally honest with yourself, with your situation,
Mhm.
with your numbers, with your expectations of life, with your vision and your values, that will help, craft the path for wherever it is that you want to go. But that's where anybody that's starting is stuck or doesn't know how to move forward, then that go back to basics, simple, clear, and effective. Otherwise, why make it complicated? I think naturally we go into drama very quickly and we create stories. And I'm guilty of this too, like every day. But we go into the drama mode, and it's like it's just not helping. Is it? I have a client that talks about things being helpful or hurtful. So considering that as well in your mind, what's the story that you're telling yourself is affecting the way that you show up in your career, in your business, with your family, with your loved ones, etc.
So, how do you balance all of this? Your business, managing your team, your life, family life. How do you balance all of it?
Routine, although my routine is flexible, I have activities that I assign to the routine. So, depending on where I'm a spiritual person and I believe energy is everywhere. So, I do a check-in. I check in my situationship every day in the morning, 4 a.m. o'clock. Meditation, that's the helper. I know a lot of people cannot meditate at all. Meditation can be a walk. Meditation can be you washing the dishes. It's that space where your brain not it doesn't disconnect, but it's blank. It's relaxed. It's away from the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that we assign to them or to it during the day. So balance comes from the stillness of meditation or just being present.
That's great. So, how has your definition of strategy evolved over time?
Well, I think I didn't know what strategy was, and now I do. Well, because as a doer, you think strategy is one thing, and it can be true when you're in the space of doing something or getting something done. But anything without a strategy cannot be executed or cannot be activated. So now I think strategy it's a guide, it's move. It's a point of view from which to function from. And then everything else is tactics and actions. Before, as a doer, I had it like backwards, but now it's a little bit different.
So tell our listeners if they would like to get in touch with you, what are the services you offer and how can someone work with you and what is the best way to reach you?
Absolutely. So anybody that is interested or has something going on with their business and don't know how to solve it, I'm available at barbaracaraballo.com and also on LinkedIn as Barbara Caraballo or on Instagram as the HowFinder. That's reach out via there on DMs or you can send a consultation request on the website or a message on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to respond and be of help however possible.
Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, tell us your top three takeaways from your business life so far that you would like to share with someone who wants to start their business.
Simplicity is the key to everything. Keeping things clear, simple, and effective is the way to go. Always ask for help. You do not have to do it alone. And there is space for creating more and greater. So live in the question.
I love that. Live in the question. That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your perspective and insight. And I wish you all the best for the coming year.
Thank you, Anisha, and thank you so much for the space.
As we wrap up with Barbara, remember that every challenge presents an opportunity to find your how. This is Anisha Jennings reminding you that sometimes the most powerful solutions comes from asking the right questions. Until next time.